big news up in Scotland. A woman's a woman. Apparently, according to the Supreme Court, saying sex is biological is not transphobic. This has been a landmark case over whether transgender women can be defined as female. For Women Scotland, a campaign group, is appealing against guidance from the Scottish government, remember that old thing, kind of finished Nicola Sturgeon's political career, under which trans women who were born biologically male can be legally defined as female if they have a gender recognition certificate. Yeah, that's it. Get a little printout, put some word art on it, and you've magically somehow defeated God's law and biology. The legal battle was sparked by a piece of legislation that aims to increase the number of women on public boards and included individuals who had undergone or were undergoing gender reassignment surgery in its definition of women. But any outcome of this latest case could have major implications across Scotland. Lawyers could use the judgment to argue whether trans women can access women's refuges, prisons, changing rooms and other single-sex spaces. It was Aidan O'Neill Casey, representing For Women Scotland. He's my favourite person of 2024 so far. He told a panel of judges, I have to make it plain, the submissions by my clients are not transphobic. And he's talking about examples of things being absurd. And he said it was absurd that a female victim of sexual violence could reasonably object to a man without the word I'm a woman now certificate touching her, but would need to be comfortable if he had that bit of paper. And he went on to say sex just means sex, as that word, and the words woman and man are understood and used in ordinary and everyday language, used every day in everyday situations by ordinary people. I mean, the big question I have is how on earth did it get to this point that you need a Casey in the Supreme Court pointing that out? Let's speak to Fiona McAnena, who's Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Fiona, this is an incredibly important ruling. I get to the impression. I don't think it's going to suddenly derail the woke train who want to see jocks in frocks lurking around a box. But at least we now have in the Supreme Court a little bit of legal defence, a little bit of legal cover and a definition that once again comes down on the side of reality, that biological sex is that. It is biological sex.
Yeah, it's a really important case. We haven't had a ruling yet, and we probably won't get that till the spring. So we haven't got a decision. But there are a couple of things that are really important about this case for all of us. The first thing to say is this is the UK Supreme Court. So what they decide applies across the whole of the UK. It isn't just something that will apply in Scotland. So, you know, we should all be grateful to For Women Scotland for pursuing this case. And they've gone through multiple stages of this, actually, and now here they are at the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the Scottish government had brought in self-ID, and then the British government stopped it. And the Scottish government had argued that anyone should be able to change the sex recorded on their birth certificate on the basis that that's how they felt. That's what we mean by self-ID. Now, we said that's a huge problem. And they said, no, it doesn't matter. It's only a piece of paper. It won't affect anything. And now here they are in the Supreme Court arguing, as you've illustrated, that it changes everything. That if a man gets a new birth certificate that says he's a woman, he gains all kinds of rights and women can no longer exclude him. So this is a massive case. And it looks like the Scottish government now has really shot itself in the foot because they're arguing against self-ID. No one can reasonably bring that in because they're arguing about it making an enormous difference to all of our rights, to safeguarding, to privacy, to everything that affects women particularly.
Yeah, I mean, look, like you, Fiona, I am particularly concerned and deeply aggrieved by the fact that you have men who suddenly say I'm a woman wanting to come into women's spaces. I have zero tolerance with that approach. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it throws women and girls under the bus at the altar of, well, I don't know, some newfangled political correctness that didn't even exist about 2 seconds ago. But what I think would really help our case here, and it's something that even we're a bit squeamish to talk about, but I think it's high time that we did, is start drilling down into some of the dodgy men who have opportunised things like this. Start looking at the fact, what are the statistics there of men who have entered women's spaces, have caused harm to women as a result of opportunising some of these sort of newfangled cultural trends. And also, I think we really need to start looking into, and again, a very difficult and awkward awkward subject to talk about. When it comes to men who profess they are women, how many of these people are genuinely gender dysphoric? How many of these people have certain fetishes like autogynephilia?
Yes, I mean, the thing is that the philosophy requires us all to accept that if a man says he feels like a woman, that he has certain rights and entitlements. And as you've just illustrated, men can do that for all kinds of reasons. They may believe it, they may not. They may get a kick out of it. They may enjoy dressing up as a woman. There used to be, the thing called a transvestite. Everyone knew what that meant, and nobody thought that it meant they were really women. And certainly people knew that didn't make it appropriate for them to go into women's spaces. I mean, there's another thing that was mentioned yesterday in court, which I think links to that lesbian groups can no longer have a lesbian-only, female lesbian-only association if the Scottish government wins. If the Scottish government is right, they're saying that a man who says he's a woman and he's attracted to women is now a lesbian. And they actually admitted that in court. Clearly, that's ridiculous. So we very much hope that will be reversed. That illustrates the madness of this law, because lesbians have enough to put up with creepy men saying you just haven't met the right man. And now those men can put on a dress and demand the right to go into a lesbian association. That cannot be right.
No, it's absolutely sickening. And what's interesting as well is we don't see this really happening in the other direction. We're not having the big court cases about women who want to identify as men, saying, I want to access men's spaces, I want to play in men's sports, I want everyone to sort of use my pronouns. I don't know whether that is because statistically, when it gets to sort of the generation that have already sort of been through the process of saying they're transitioning, there are far fewer, I think. But last time I looked at what were once stats on gender dysphoria, it was a predominantly male condition. Or whether this also actually reflects what we're talking about here, which is when you look at the vulnerabilities involved, when you look at physical powers, and when also you look at some of those fetishes that may be being disguised by men saying, oh, well, it's just because I identify as a woman.
I think you're exactly right with that last point. When you look at the age and sex of people claiming to be the other sex, among young people, girls are massively overrepresented. So there's something really tragic happening with teenage girls who feel deeply uncomfortable, partly perhaps with the attention they suddenly start to get from men. So they are disproportionately represented among young people claiming to be gender dysphoric. But once you get to over 30, there are, if you look at the middle-aged transitioners, it's very rare to find a woman who decides at the age of 40 or 50 or 60 that maybe she was a man all along. It's not that rare among men. So I think there's good reason to think that some people are abusing this, and it should not be their right. The point is that there's no way of telling who the good actors are and who the bad actors are. I mean, some people would say they're all bad actors. Who knows? We don't know what's in anyone else's mind. But what we do know is that women who go into a male-free space deserve to know that it will be male-free. And that's why this case matters to all of us.
And not just male-free, pervert-free. And I think that is this is one part of the argument which people are very worried about talking about, and that is the Venn diagram of men who actually have particular fetishes, who then want to identify as women. And it will be exactly those. If you leave your front door open, the person who's going to walk through it is the burglar who wants to nick your telly, not the Good Samaritan. If you leave a woman's changing room or special space open to a man who says, oh, I'm now a woman, guess what? The opportunists with fetishes are going to take advantage. Fiona McAnena, it's always wonderful talking to you. Keep up the good work. You're doing great things for women and girls. And it is true, if you look, Fiona was talking there about right now, amongst teens and young people presenting to gender clinics. I hate that word, presenting. I'm a presenter. Doesn't know why, I think it's one of those horrible overused terms like problematic in the 21st century. Anyway, when these people are turning up at gender clinics, there's a huge amount of teenage girls there who are suffering all sorts of societal ills as a result of hypersexualisation and all sorts of other things going on. And but by and large, if you look historically at the data, do your research, gender dysphoria is very much predominantly a male issue.